Alright, what's up y'all, it's LakerFan here. As you can see by the title of today's video, we're ranking all the center builds in NBA 2K20 in tiers E through S. We're going to start from the bottom, go to the top. I hope y'all enjoy. If you do, feel free to drop a like, sub if you're new, turn on the noties, all that good stuff. Let's try this video 1,000 likes in the first 24 hours. I did the point guard version of this video yesterday, so if you want to check that out, feel free to. Before we get started, I want to address too, there's going to be one ground rule with this. The shortest I'm going to allow these builds to be is 6'7". A lot of these rely on their hybrid ability. For instance, the play glass at 7'3" is a horrible build. The play glass at 6'8" or 6'7" is great. You guys understand. Or same with like post scoring versions of builds, where this build at 7'3" is much more usable, but at 6'7" it's completely awful. So anyway, I'm gonna use the best version of each build. Just keep that in mind, and I hope y'all enjoy. If you do, feel free to drop a like, sub if you're new, turn on them noties, all that good stuff. Let's try this video 1,000 likes in the first 24 hours. Starting this video off and coming in at the E tier, we have the play stretch and the pure play. These builds both lack the defense to really be a comp big man, and honestly, they're both better off being short. I feel like they're just flat out good point guard builds. They definitely belong to be anywhere around 6'5" or shorter. You can manage to be these builds at 6'7" or something like that. Obviously, anything taller just becomes detrimental. They're not exactly the best post-scoring builds either, so being anything around like 7 foot is just not ideal. And obviously, with the playmaking in your build, you're gonna want to be able to move quickly. Same with the shooting. Obviously, you're gonna want to be able to create your own shot. You can still be a pick and pop rim sharp and like, you know, sort of style option with this, but it definitely doesn't provide the defense you would like for. So coming in the D tier, we got the play slash. This build at tallest should be around 6'9", shortest should probably be 6'7". At 6'9" is the tallest you can go and still get contact dunks and pro dribble moves. And considering your pie chart is playmaking and finishing, I would assume you want pro dribble moves and contact dunks. So with all that said, I do want to talk about what I thought this build could be at the beginning of the year. So in 2K19, when it came to post scoring, it was dominant, tall, interior finishing post scores, right? It was isolation. They had somebody sitting in the corner, so they were just going to one-on-one you pretty much, and your dominance was used. Now, in this game, where drop steps are not very good, standing dunks and standing layups aren't very good, and stuff like that, and even just relying on contact dunks down low in the paint, it's not viable. Now, early on in the year, when we went from 2K19, I was thinking this build was going to be the post meta. I'm talking it had Hall of Fame drop stepper, contact finisher, stuff like that. You could maybe even be a solid slasher while doing all this stuff. And you would have Hall of Fame dimer, floor general, all types of stuff like that. So you couldn't even double off of this. And we just came from a game where pure locks would be sitting in the corner and you definitely wanted as much dimer as possible. But with all that said, obviously, like I was saying, interior finishing is not very reliable in this game. Standing layups and standing dunks aren't reliable. However, obviously hop dunks and stuff like that are. And when it comes to post scoring, honestly, if you do anything but a post fade and a post hook in this game, it's just not viable. And this build isn't really the greatest at either of those. And obviously you want, you know, your shooting badges for the quick draw, even to accelerate your post hook. So staying on the topic of post scoring, in the C tier we have the pure stretch and the pure slash. The pure stretch is an absolute post fade machine. This thing gets 99 post fade, gets good 3-pointer as well. This build can actually still pick and pop really well. I think a lot of people sleep on the pure stretch just in general, but definitely its pick and pop ability, where a lot of people don't know about the pick and pop slips, where you just fake a screen, pop out super deep for anybody who's playing front back, and the big man's just sitting in the paint. This build is an absolute machine when it comes to 3-point scoring, but what weighs it down is obviously its defensive ability. You're going to see in this video why. I mean, you can see with the remaining pie charts. Defense definitely rules. You can see with all of these things, but with all that said, I just feel like the pure stretch lacks the defense that we're talking about. You definitely don't want to upgrade finishing with this because post fade is all you need when it comes to finishing down low. But then with the playmaking, it definitely still doesn't really bring much to the table either. This build is just great when it comes to 3-point shooting and post fade ability, but it pretty much speaks for itself. That's all it's good for. So just keep that in mind. It's an okay 3v3 build. It's an okay 2v2 build, but they both have to be in the right situations as well. Now, with this pure slash, it's kind of on the different end where there's a lot to talk about, but it's very complicated, right? So how I feel about the pure slash, this is a great finishing build, but it doesn't really bring too much else to the table. You definitely lack in the defensive ability. If you want to run things like brick wall and be a screen setter, then that's even less defensive badges that you have. And it's already hard in general to get defensive badges on this build. Now, if you made it literally just to not be able to shoot, which I don't know why you would, because that's part of the perk of the build. If you made it so it didn't have any shooting, then it would have solid defense and solid playmaking with 30 finishing or something like that. Now, the point of this build, in my opinion, is to be well-rounded. So, in my opinion, the best way to make this is to be around 6'8". You'll have 99 driving dunk, 95 driving layup. I wouldn't max out the close shot. That puts you at around 21 finishing. Then you could have 10 shooting, about 10 or 14 playmaking, something around that number, and then around 8 to 10 defense, where, like I said, it's going to be a struggle. You're not going to be able to use things like brick wall comfortably, but if you do use brick wall, then it hurts the rest of your defense. Now, another problem with this build is who do you run with? So this already isn't really a meta 3v3 build. I definitely wouldn't suggest to run this on the 3s. But when it comes to 2s, you can use it in a lot of different situations. So situation number 1 is to play with this PLAYSHARP build right here, where in all honesty, if you bring a PLAYSHARP and a pure slash to the 2v2 court, you're already at a complete disadvantage. You don't have any defense in your build, and defense rules in this game, especially in the 2v2 court. Now, with all that said, this build would still have the ability to pick and pop, I will say, to unlock the ability to become a screen setter when playing with a shooting build, because in my opinion, you definitely need to be able to do that. It really enhances your game offensively. You'd be able to set screens, catch lobs, pick and pop a little bit as well off that Hall of Fame dimer where your point guard drives and then he kicks out to you in the perimeter. But with all that said, defense is definitely lacking in that lineup. Now, if you ran with something like a play lock at the 1, it takes away the pick and roll, pick and pop ability in my opinion, because to combine pick and roll with a build that doesn't have great shooting, it just becomes really hard to do in my opinion. That's why a lot of these play locks don't run pick and pop in the first place. But with all that said, it definitely provides another ISO option to where you could just kick out to the corner 3, and with 10 shooting badges and 50-ish three-pointer, you can definitely still hit, especially off Hall of Fame dimer, and this play lock is another ISO option. So the problem with this pure slash stuff too, right? If you run the flashy passer, you know, sort of crazy cheese, takeover meter going up super quick, and then ISO with your pure slash, it's all fun and games until a gigantic rim protector comes in at the 2, and you just can't overcome that. Now, that's another thing we'll talk about with this finisher build right here if you want to talk about that play style. But anyway, nonetheless, the whole point is that you will definitely struggle to finish on tall, good interior defending builds. So to compensate for that, you'll use your 10 shooting badges and play with something like this, where this play lock could ISO their weak link on offense most likely, because if they're running with something that has crazy good interior defense, they probably have an outside point guard like this who's going to get exposed as far as, you know, his interior defense. So now you can just go sit corner, and this build right here could just ISO. So long story short is with this pure slasher, it's very complicated how to run with this. I think it's very specific and teammate oriented, where you need to have the right teammates to play with, but it could be a solid build, all that said. So coming in the B tier, we have the shooting and finishing pie chart. This is meant to be a post scorer. I would say this build is complete garbage at anything other than 7'3" or 7'+. I just think this build gets weighed down in its effectiveness of being a hybrid by the fact that you can only get contact dunks and lob animations like the pro lob animations at 6'6" or shorter. That's what sucks about this. If you could get contact dunks at 6'7" or 6'8" with this build like you can with the play lock, imagine that, right? A slashing build doesn't get contact dunks at 6'8", but a play lock pie chart does. Anyway, the whole point, and so does a pure lock, but I still get it. Obviously, shooting weighs down your driving ability and your dunking ability. But anyway, my whole point is, because of how 2K treats this build in terms of its hybrid ability, I would definitely recommend to only make this build in the sense of being a post scorer. And this is what really the 1v1 court post meta is. It's a slash sharp pie chart where you get, and a lot of people would be like, well, what do you need shooting badges for if you're just going to post hook every single play? Well, check this out. So a lot of people know this, a lot of people don't, where things like Hot Zone Hunter, Green Machine, Hot Start, you know, all types of stuff like that, Volume Shooter, they actually activate on your post hooks too. So to have a shooting and finishing build that has great post hook rating, great post fade rating, has deep fades, all types of stuff like that. Like I said, Hot Start, Hot Zone Hunter, obviously Pro Touch when it comes to the finishing ability, and same with like consistent finisher, contact finisher, deep hooks. I mean, it's just an absolute unstoppable post scoring build that has great versatility to it. And when it really comes down to it, slashers absolutely hate playing this build in the 1v1 court. That's honestly my least favorite build to play. Obviously, it's everybody's least favorite build to play, but truly, when it comes to the slashing matchup, this build, it just counters the slasher so well because it's so tall, and when you can't score from anywhere but in the paint, this build just locks it up. And then on top of that, like I said, obviously unstoppable offense, crazy post hook and post fade ability. And then when it comes to point guards, obviously you can't guard this build straight up. Like if you're a PG that's 6'5" or shorter, you can't guard this build. But the one thing you have going for you is the fact that you can use your speed to expose this build's speed in the defense. But unfortunately, I mean, you got to play a perfect game to be able to beat this build on the 1v1 court. It's awful. And then same with the post takeover. I mean, it's just unstoppable, bro. Man, you guys are going to hate me for what I'm doing right here, but I just cannot decide on these three builds right here, whether they belong in the A or S tier. I feel like there's a lot of things that it depends on. We'll talk about that in just a sec. I'm just going to go from left to right on these builds and talk about what they do and how good they are, because I feel like they're all really the 4 meta big men builds in the game. And I feel like it all comes down to personal preference. So as far as the Rimsharp build, it's the easiest to play on. It's so easy to be out of the way. Obviously, with Hall of Fame shooting and Hall of Fame defense, you bring the best of both worlds. You're really easy to work with as far as, guards who like to drive or even guards who like to shoot. It's still, an absolute threat when it comes to the pick and pop ability. And obviously, you get Hall of Fame brick wall with Hall of Fame shooting badges. And really, the only thing you need to be able to do on this build, you don't even have to have a high IQ or anything like that as far as being a big man. You literally just have to be able to set good screens and shoot when you're open. It's as simple as that. Now, when you complicate things and go to the next level, this build becomes elite. You can be a great pick and roll man. You can hit pick and pop slips in the right situations when people play front back defense, and you can expose the bigs who just kind of sit paint, stuff like that too. You can even sit in the corner or sit on the wing for somebody who likes to ISO. This build is absolutely just an easy glue build. A lot of people love playing with this, and rightfully so. And then when you move along to the right side, okay, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to talk from left to right, like I said. The play glass is a nice ISO option on 2v2 as far as a big man build. Now, this could still play the 3v3 big man, could still pick and pop if you have the right stick ability where, you can shoot with a little bit lower for three-pointer. I don't think it's that hard to do in the first place as long as you have hot zones and hot zone hunter and stuff like that. I feel like I could easily do this as well. But anyway, talk about the play lock. Obviously, like I said, great ISO option. You do need to be around a 99 or 99.9 overall to be able to have contact dunks in the pro lob animations and stuff like that too. The lob animations probably don't matter to a lot of people. Pretty much what I'm saying is this build is a great build, but you should definitely run with another ISO option as well if you're playing 2v2 court. And I think it's a pretty solid 3v3 like big man build, but it's definitely not the best one. I think it's probably, below all three of these when it comes to threes big man. But when it comes to twos big man, I think this is right up here in the S tier. So that's where it just becomes a complicated thing. It's hard to put a stamp on it and really say whether it's A or S tier. I think what it really comes down to is stick skill ability, not so much IQ. I think stick skill wise, if you are great with this build, then it belongs in the S tier. Like if you can shoot with a little bit low 3-point rating, if you can overcome the fact that it's driving ability with the badges is pretty low as well. But obviously, any build with Hall of Fame defense isn't too hard to play on. But anyway, like I said, if you guys really want me to put a stamp on this, we're going to go ahead and move it into the A tier. I feel like just from a broad standpoint, as far as like park players and stuff like that too, it's definitely a lot harder to play on. It definitely requires the right amount of stick skill and all that, implemented and stuff like that. So anyway, to move along to the finisher build, the 6'9", in my opinion, this is how I have it exactly. The 6'9" finisher. It's a great pick and roll man. It can actually, finish pretty well in the ISO sets as well, where say you run with somebody who has flashy passer, like I was saying with the pure slasher earlier, where you just get your takeover high. And then obviously this build can actually move really well when it has takeover on. Now when it doesn't have takeover on, it becomes a lot tougher. Now, I will say, with these two builds right here, why they're so, in the middle area, it depends on who you play with. If you play with a great PLAYSHARP and somebody who can actually get open really well off screens and you run pick and roll, then these builds become S tier. I say, they're really easy to work with as long as you have solid IQ. You don't really need stick skill when it comes to using these builds, but you definitely need the right IQ. If you're an inside big man who doesn't know when to roll or how to roll or when to do it at the right times, you become a complete detriment to your offense. It is absolutely horrible for your spacing. Your point guard is going to get double teamed and not know absolutely where to go at all because you just can't roll at the right times. That's why I'm saying with the rim sharp, it becomes a whole lot easier because all you have to do is really hold B, stand there, and your point guard can drive whenever he wants to. With this build right here, or this build right here with the pure lock or the finisher, you are much relied on to have high IQ and know what you're doing with the big man and actually roll at the right times. Now, with that said, the Hall of Fame finishing is a nice perk. You can catch lobs really well out of the pick and rolls or in the ISO sets. Or honestly, if you make this build with no playmaking and solid shooting, you could still low-key hit some pick and pops with this, or at least spot up in the corner really well and really reliably as well. But with all that said, like I said, it definitely relies on how smart your point guard is. With all that said, we're going to go ahead and move this to the A tier as well. And then with the pure rim or pure lock, whatever you want to call it, I'll put it like this. With this build, you definitely want to make it a center. I feel like for park randoms and stuff like that, and I don't mean to call you randoms, but I'm saying if you play with randoms and you line up at the 2 with this build because you wanted to make it a pure lock instead of a pure rim at 6'8" or 6'9", it becomes very problematic because if you line up at the 2 with this build in the park, I promise you, you're going to hate your life on this 2K stuff. You're going to be stuck on some spot up who is going to, just sit in the corner all game. You're going to watch your point guard who has one defensive badge get toasted, and then same with, you're going to play with another big man who doesn't want to switch with you as well. And it's just really problematic. So with all that said, this again depends on who you play with, how you play with them, and really what it comes down to is the same thing as the finisher. If you are running the pick and roll, not only do you have to know what you're doing, but your point guard has to know how to hit you in the right situations too. Because if you're wide open on rolls and this dude doesn't see you, doesn't know when to hit you, he hits you late, throws a really late lob, it just goes straight over your head and you can't catch it. It just is very build dependent on who you're playing with. So again, I think all three of these builds, they could all be flexed up to the S tier, but the problem with it is that it becomes a little too hard to expect every point guard to be a truly comp PG. So with all that said, it's a lot easier for them to rely on a little bit of drive game, and this build is really the only one that's completely reliable when it comes to the pick and pop or spotting up wing ability. This build has a little bit of it, but these two definitely don't. I would say this one is more stick skill oriented, these two are more IQ oriented. But with all that said, I hope you all enjoyed the video. If you did, feel free to drop a like, sub if you're new, turn on them noties, all that good stuff. Let's try this video 1,000 likes in the first 24 hours. A funny story too that I made now that I made it to the very end of the video. This one was a whole lot smoother with the recording, but check this out. Literally, I uploaded the whole, I recorded the whole first take on this video with accidentally having it on my Xbox screen instead of my Windows screen right here. So instead of showing y'all all the pie charts and stuff like that, it was literally just my home screen of me looking at the 2K20 menu. So unfortunately, the whole first take on this video got completely just wasted and deleted. But this was definitely a smoother second take. Anyway, if y'all made it to the very end of the video, put center or big man in the comments to show your support that you made it all the way through. Other than that, hope y'all enjoyed, and let's try this video 1,000 likes in the first 24 hours like I was saying. Other than that, hope y'all enjoyed. Take it easy, man. Peace.